it's a toxic thing that people are doing. It's this looking for people that are bad and looking for things that are wrong, looking for wrong speak. It's very toxic. It's toxic for the people that are doing it. It's toxic for the people that are receiving it. It's not a way that human beings would ever communicate in one-on-one. I mean, I try to communicate with people the same way online as I would if they were right in front of me. I don't always succeed.
Joe Rogan has done something so bold, it's shaking the foundations of woke Hollywood. And this time, it's not just another fiery podcast rant. This is a direct confrontation with the system that's dictating everything from the movies we watch to the conversations we're allowed to have. What's truly wild? Rogan isn't just calling it out. He's exposing the cracks in the entire woke agenda, and people are starting to wake up. Could this be the tipping point that brings it all down?
There's two types of like older liberals. There's like the type that like is like an old hippie and is like, oh man, that was cool, you did that. And then there's types that look at you like,
well, he wasn't a liberal.
no.
He used to be a Republican.
Yeah.
And then he got on MSNBC.
Yeah, you gotta go with the money, I guess.
Change his panties.
Yeah, but it was that was a weird segment.
So what's the root of Rogan's outrage? It's Hollywood's relentless woke transformation. Think back to the golden age of comedy when movies like There's Something About Mary and Kingpin were unfiltered, raw, and laugh-out-loud funny. These films didn't tiptoe around offending someone. They embraced the absurdity of life, and that's what made them unforgettable.
Is that a hair gel?
Yeah.
Great. I can use
No, you don't have to. You don't.
I just ran out.
Now, good luck finding a comedy that takes even the slightest risk. Every joke has been sanitized, every storyline neutered, and every ounce of creativity watered down to fit the woke narrative. It's like Hollywood has forgotten how to make people laugh without turning it into a lecture. Rogan is asking the hard questions. When did entertainment stop being about freedom and start being about fitting into a box?
Because people get very aggressive with it. Just like people were super aggressive about the vaccine. You know, I hate seeing people die because they made a poor choice. But there's something insane about how many people were like pro-vaccine advocates that were shaming people and angry at people. And now they're dead. And they're not dead because they ran their time and they got old and they died. And, you know, it's unfortunate, but it happens to all of us. No, they're dead young. Like a lot.
To understand how deep this goes, Rogan has often pointed to universities as the breeding ground for these radical ideologies. He's been warning about this for years, predicting that the woke culture incubated in schools would eventually spill over into every corner of society. And guess what? He was spot on.
It was announced by the organizing committee that the situation would be reversed, and they asked white student, staff, and faculty not to come to campus. And that did not at all sit well with me.
One of the most striking examples Rogan has discussed is the story of Brett Weinstein, a former professor at Evergreen State College. The college attempted a bizarre stunt, asking white people to stay off campus for a day. When Weinstein stood against it, the backlash was immediate and brutal. A mob of students, most of whom had never even interacted with him, labeled him a racist for simply refusing to comply. Rogan has said this is the playbook of woke culture. Demand absolute obedience and destroy anyone who resists.
It's a standard maneuver when someone wants to silence someone, when someone wants to put someone in a category that's instantly recognizable. One of the best ones is racist.
Rogan's not wrong. This pattern has spread far beyond campuses. These woke warriors are now infiltrating Hollywood, corporations, and media, spreading what Rogan calls a mind virus. He even compares it to the transformation of iconic actors like Bill Murray. In almost every recent movie, Murray's characters start off as sharp, sarcastic, and edgy, but inevitably soften by the end to become a sanitized, woke-approved version of themselves.
It's like really uncomfortable person. Mm-hmm. It's almost like like too many people paid attention to him for too long, mm-hmm. and it freaked him out. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know him, but when I see, stories about him or interviews with him or, any weird controversy that happens with him, mm-hmm. I'm almost like, I think the guy just got overwhelmed.
Contrast that with someone like Chevy Chase. Rogan points out that Chase's characters stay true to their roots, arrogant, sarcastic, and unapologetically themselves from start to finish. And that's exactly why people still love him. It's a reminder of what Hollywood used to be before it became obsessed with pleasing the Twitter mob.
I haven't watched the Lord of the Rings thing on Amazon, but I heard it's a fucking disaster.
Oh, is it? It's the most expensive TV show ever made.
Fucking disaster.
But Rogan's criticism doesn't stop at comedy. He's taken aim at how Hollywood is mangling beloved franchises. Case in point, The Lord of the Rings. Amazon's attempt to reimagine Tolkien's masterpiece has been nothing short of a disaster. Instead of focusing on epic battles, timeless friendships, and the fight between good and evil, the series is stuffed with woke messaging that fans never asked for.
So this girl goes into the litter room or to the girls' room and urinates or whatever. I don't know if she poops in it. That's pretty gross. Yeah, I mean, like if you could teach your cat, by the way, here's the thing. If you could teach your cat to use the toilet, you would. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah.
Like you don't want a box of piss in your house. It's the worst. I've had cats my whole life. It's the worst thing about having cats. You got to clean that box of piss every day.
Yeah.
And it's not just The Lord of the Rings. Rogan has called out Hollywood for turning franchises like Star Wars into vehicles for woke pandering, sacrificing the storytelling and magic that made these films iconic in the first place. Fans are furious, and Rogan is leading the charge, calling for a return to authentic, meaningful storytelling.
Like, that's generally something that's a huge red flag.
It's a huge red flag. And you have activists who are teachers. That's a fact.
Yeah.
That's a fact. A lot of the teachers are teachers specifically because they want to be able to influence young kids. That's a fact.
What's even more alarming is how this mindset has seeped into schools. Rogan shared a shocking story about how some schools are letting kids identify as animals. Yes, animals. Students are walking around dressed as cats, hissing at each other, and teachers are actually encouraging this behavior. Rogan calls it indulgent and absurd, and he's right. Instead of focusing on education, schools are catering to every whim, no matter how ridiculous.
The cultural agreement we have about like how we view, or this is what the push is, or what this idea of the compliance, forced compliance into this ideology. You have to accept what we view now as sex and gender.
It doesn't stop there. Rogan has talked about how schools are hiding critical information from parents, especially regarding gender identity. In some cases, children as young as 12 are making life-changing decisions about their identities, and schools are keeping parents in the dark. Rogan sees this as a dangerous overreach, driven by activist teachers pushing their ideologies under the radar.
Piss people off? I mean, you're gonna always have people, you're gonna have more people upset with you, and there's more righteous indignation, I think, than I've ever seen in comedy. I've had more people furious at me for what are clearly jokes.
Despite the chaos, Rogan remains unshaken. He's made it clear he won't apologize, won't bend to the mob, and won't play by Hollywood's rules. And that's exactly why the woke establishment despises him. They've tried smear campaigns and online harassment, but Rogan's audience only grows stronger, seeing him as a voice of reason in an increasingly polarized world.
That category is conservative, like ruthless, nasty, mean, a person who's not kind, you're not a person who's caring about other people. You're a conservative. You're a mean bully, mean, mad white man.
Rogan's platform has become a force too big to ignore, and it's shaking Hollywood to its core. He's not just calling out the issues, he's dismantling them piece by piece. From the destruction of comedy to the erosion of classic franchises, Rogan is relentless in his mission to expose the truth.
Consequence of socialization, or are they biological? And the answer to that is tricky, because how much something is social and how much it is biological actually depends on the social circumstances.
And then there's his take on gender politics. Rogan is one of the few public figures willing to tackle the complexities of this issue. He's criticized schools for pushing kids toward gender transitions without proper guidance, and has spoken out against laws that compel people to use specific pronouns, calling it a dangerous form of censorship.
People getting canceled.
Yeah, it's a strange time in that regard, where it seems like no one knows exactly what our cultural framework is anymore for discussing things, and every time it gets pushed further and further along, you have to kind of catch up with what you're allowed to say and what you're allowed to talk about and what's okay. Like, it didn't used to be controversial to say there are two genders.
Rogan's stance is simple but powerful. These are children, and they need protection, not ideology. He's raising questions that few others dare to ask, and his fearless approach is resonating with millions. Whether it's Hollywood, schools, or woke culture at large, Joe Rogan is taking it all on, and he's doing it on his terms. What's your take on Joe Rogan's bold stand against woke culture? Share your thoughts below.